As it says in my channel description, I handle the less sexy, but more important aspects of the Trump movement. In this video, free trade. Free trade is an amorphous mix of words that in practice have become an oxymoron. Free trade as a concept is brilliant. It's a place where conservatives and libertarians can hold hands and get married at the Commerce Department. But before you go run off holding hands, singing Tiptoe Through the Tulips together, let's test your interpretation of free trade. In the U.S. versus China, a term that cannot be overstated is currency manipulation. Instead of a one-on-one method, yuan versus dollar, head-to-head, the Chinese government inflate and deflate the yuan's value by using the basket of currencies method. Recent additions include the South Korean won, the South African rand, the United Arab Emirates dirham, Saudi Arabia's rial, Hungary's forint, Poland's zloty, and Turkey's lira. Only 30.5% of this basket are dollar or dollar-backed currencies. Hungary's forint and South Africa's rand provide enough to claim currency impoverishment alone. In actual value, over 60% of its backing is financial astroturf on the currency side. Smartly, they buy gold separately from the yuan. This provides an economic backup against unexpected deflation on the currency market. That would make them very powerful should the dollar collapse. And the United States, that would make us very, very vulnerable. The U.S. trade deficit with China was $347 billion in 2016. U.S. total debt to China is $1.49 trillion.
Ouch!
So what does that mean to people trying to make America great again? This mismatch in goods and services means that $347 billion has left our economy to stimulate the economy of China. That's $347 billion we've taken away from our children and our grandchildren and American innovation. We buy cheap goods with dollars. The merchants in China, however, cannot respend those dollars in their U.S. currency form. Even if the transactions were to purchase American items, they must first filter their dollars through Chinese state-owned banks, which in turn convert the dollars to yuan, their domestic currency. The Chinese government then takes those dollars, and instead of investing in goods produced here, they buy debt in the form of treasury notes and stock in U.S. companies. This only benefits the political elite and large industrial corporations. Do you remember the figure that you're hearing about how $1 billion have been lifted out of poverty by free trade? 3/4 of them were in China, a managed economy not practicing free trade at all. If you add in the layer of Chinese interest in American companies with lobbying firms, you get a major two-pronged assault on labor in America along with small business. In order to compete in an all-out free trade global economy, as free trade is defined, American labor has to drop its standard of living, and small business has to either be a franchise, which is basically renting a tiny slice of a conglomerate, or they can work for the man. That removes the upwardly mobile middle class and makes us wage slaves with a courtocracy ruling a semi-autonomous autocrat government. Our country's government then serves as just another layer, keeping the common person further away from the real decision makers at the World Bank and WTO, among others. Free trade does not decentralize meddling governments and open the playing field. What it actually does is place faceless bureaucrats into positions of trade managers controlling who can trade and how. Why do you think the UK had Brexit? Third quarter 2016 has been touted as one of the best growth spurts since the Obama administration took office. Many believe it a Trump bounce. While the Trump effect is real and ever-growing, and I will cover that in future videos, these statistics were compiled before the election, and at the time fake news had Hillary as odds-on favorite to win around the world. Would you believe that third quarter growth in 2016 came from two simple factors: bad weather in South America and the infamous soybean? Basically, it was a bad production year for crops in Brazil and Argentina. According to Standard Life Investments chief economist Jeremy Lawson, that makes this a growth spurt with no long-term effect. On a personal note, Standard Life Investments uses a different proprietary formula for measuring the world economy, a much more comprehensive, individual-based approach, so they are more trustworthy than other such firms, at least on the retail level, at least in my research. Back to the video. He went on to say personal consumption, which is almost 3/4 of our national economy, had disappointing numbers. Soybeans were a lone buck on the current bottom coasting trend. Trade traders like Mark Levin, John Stossel, Rob Portman, and Hillary Clinton, for example, join arm in arm with the Chamber of Commerce, the Federal Reserve, and the Council on Foreign Relations when it comes to the type of free trade they embrace. Mark Levin will not tell you the free trade deals he loves and defends have baked in immigration quotas with visas you may have never even heard of. We all know the alphabet soup that sounds like the Disease Control Center, HB1 and HB4, along with H2A and H3. But what about the TN class visas or the E3s? Mark holds hands with Hillary in embracing the loss of job prospects for American workers. Why it's particularly egregious in Mr. Levin's case is he's a rare intellect who reads, absorbs, and analyzes with a retention second to none on radio. He's read these agreements and understands the legalese they are written in. In 2016, according to Homeland Security's public report, 465,000 people overstayed their visa agreement, not only with our country, but their country of origin as well, thus breaking the law. Tens of thousands of these overstayed visas would not be possible without NAFTA and the Australian Free Trade Agreement. Mark neglected to mention that in all his tirades, and believe me, I've listened to him, I've heard them all, I've also never heard him mention that until the creation of the income tax, tariffs paid for our government. Europe does not use the word tariff. They much prefer a 15 to 20% VAT tax. That makes American-made goods far too expensive to compete on any measurable level. Like the EU, the Chinese have a huge import tax on American goods. Add that to a deflated currency, and who outside of their 1% can afford items from the United States? How is that free trade, Mark? One more thing, an unintended consequence of free trade. Apple, Microsoft, and 100 other tech companies have standing to sue against President Trump's 7-nation refugee ban. So now free trade also endangers our physical safety along with financial security. Thanks, Mark. Please feel free to share specific questions, maybe sources that are better than the ones I've offered, in the comments section. I'll try to make the answers as entertaining as possible, and I'm happy for any tips, leads, transparent heads of people I can use in videos. Thanks.